This could be the biggest innovation in woodworking tools in the last decade. And I'm not talking about the bandsaw in particular. I'm talking about the technologies and the materials used to build this and many other tools from this company. But now they claim that they've come out with a new rust-proof top for their table saws, their bandsaws, and their router tables. They claim it will not rust. And we're gonna find out. I'd like to thank Harvey for sponsoring this video. I'm fixing to put your tools to the test to see if this thing will rust. If you'd like to check out this bandsaw or any tool from Harvey that I showed today, I'll put links in the description and the pinned comment to help you find them easier. One of the major struggles when you buy a big woodworking tool like a table saw or a bandsaw or a router table is you have to fight rust, especially if you're in a high humidity environment or a damp environment, or somebody sets a drink on your thing and you'll freak out, because you know what's going to happen. That water will create rust. Imagine the worst case scenario. You leave home, and when you come back, a pipe has burst in the ceiling and flooded your brand new saw. That happened to my friend Drew Witt over at Whitworks here on YouTube. I'll link to this video in the description. It literally almost destroyed this saw because it had so much water on it for a period of time. It was completely covered in rust. He thought it was gone. He was able to restore it, but not all the way back to picture perfectness. It was still stained, it still had some pitting, things like that happens with cast iron. Harvey claims that that will never happen with their new nickel-plated technology on their tabletops. And not only is the top nickel-plated, but also the underside of this top. They say it won't rust, and I'm fixing to find out because there's some rain coming, and I'm gonna do the unthinkable. I'm gonna unbox this brand new bandsaw, and then I'm gonna take this top and set it in the rain. And I'm gonna even set with it while it rains. So I sat with this saw until I got cold, and then I went inside and I let it sit there and get rained on for a solid hour. And we had some pretty good rain come through during that hour. I thought, you know what, an hour in the rain is pretty good. I think if it's gonna rust in an hour. I brought it in, I set it on my workbench, and I turned the lights off and went inside. And I didn't come back out and check on it until the next morning. And when I turned the lights on, I was really surprised. You only see some water spotting, which is, you know, if you wash your car, you'll get water spots. They wiped off very easy, just very, very easy. And it's been 3 days since I did that, and this still, it has not rusted, and it looks just like the day I took it out of the package. This is seriously impressive technology that they're using on these tabletops. All right, you can see Wednesday, December 11th, 2:36. We're gonna leave these overnight. This sopping, wringing wet rag I'm gonna place right here on the left. Ice cold Topo Chico, my favorite mineral water, on the right. Let it sweat there overnight. We'll check it at the end of the video to see if it rusts. Harvey, you better not let me down. You think it'll rust? Let me know in the comments. We'll check it at the end. Another great thing about this nickel plating on these tabletops is it's almost 3 times harder than cast iron. What that means is if you drop things on there, it's not gonna ding, scratch, that kind of stuff as easy as cast iron does. Or if you're really rough and you throw in big chunks of wood up there, if you're cutting off live edge or making bowl blanks, anything like that, it's gonna hold up to that abuse. And speaking of cutting bowl blanks and things like that, a lot of people like to cut those green. In other words, the wood is still really wet. So you don't really have to worry about trying to maintain this top after you've cut through your bowl blanks and all that. It doesn't matter if the wood's green and wet, it doesn't matter, it's not gonna rust. And so you could leave the water standing on this and it'll be just fine. It'll wipe clean the next day or 3 days later or 2 weeks later, whenever you decide to wipe it down. If you're like me, 6 months later, I'm not very good at maintaining things, so this technology is perfect for me. If you're not familiar with Harvey, they were founded in 1999, and over the last few years, they have really been pushing the envelope on innovation in woodworking tools like no other company that I've seen. And I've had the pleasure of being able to see a lot of these new innovations at trade shows that we go to and make videos of. I've met a lot of the Harvey staff. I've been very impressed at how much innovation they're really putting into their tools like no other company. Now let's talk about the overall build quality of the entire piece of equipment, because while that is important that the tabletop won't rust and they have this new technology, it doesn't really amount to a hill of beans if the saw or the equipment's not that great. Now I have had the opportunity, as said before, to see a lot of their tools at these trade shows, but I've never actually owned one until now. Harvey reached out and said, hey, would you want to check this out? And I said, well, you know what? I've built this relationship with them over the last several years. I know them fairly well. And I've seen their equipment, and I've always been a little Harvey curious here. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. So we partnered up on this. Unboxing and setup on this bandsaw couldn't be easier. Now, you probably need an extra set of hands, which I didn't have, but otherwise, there's not a whole lot to put together. And I'm glad of that, because I don't like assembling a bunch of stuff. It's just annoying and very time consuming. All you have to do is take this out of the box. The fence is already pre-installed on the top. You just set the top on the trunnion system and just put those bolts in. And then after that, all you have to do is put the fence on and you're good to go. I did get the mobile spider base, which we'll touch on as well. And so sliding it off the pallet onto that mobile base was a little hairy. But as far as assembling the mobile base itself, very easy. Just a few bolts. It went together very quickly. Really, the only thing left to do is install the blade. And it was very easy to do that. It's like any other bandsaw on the market. The adjustments and all that's very, very similar and very easy to install that blade. One thing you may notice when you open up the doors is the flywheels themselves are very similar colored to the underside of your table, and that's because those are also nickel plated. So you're not going to have to worry about them rusting, and they're also more durable than cast iron and aluminum or anything like that. So they're going to last you for a very, very long time because they're made out of that same material. And speaking of the underside of the table, you'll notice that all of the gears and everything under the table is also that nickel plating. One thing that'll make or break your bandsaw experience is setup of the blade, getting everything tracking, making sure it's all perfectly square and set up. This was very easy to do. The way you adjust these roller guides could not be easier. I'm quite impressed. A lot of times you have the ones that you have to push in and hold while you tighten. These aren't the case. You just loosen the bolt on the left, and then this roller guide is basically like a cam action. It'll roll to and away. And you set that exactly where you want it, and then you let go and you tighten this. Very, very easy to set up. The rear rollers are exactly the same, as well as the rollers underneath. They are also adjusting the same. There is a little cover here that's very easy to remove to get to those rollers. Setting the fence up and adjusting it is also extremely easy. They have 4 bolts on this end here, 1 on the other, but these are just adjustment bolts so that you can adjust the pitch angle, so you can make sure you get this squared perfectly to the T-slot. And then the top bolts up here also adjust to adjust the 90 degree to the tabletop. Mine was perfectly 90 degree to the tabletop out of the box, but you can adjust those if you need to. I did have to adjust this slightly, just slightly, to get it perfectly square to the miter slot. And the rear bolt back here lets you raise and lower the fence on the back side. The fence is way better than any bandsaw fence I've used, and they even have a new fence coming out called the Big Eye that's going to be available for these bandsaws like this. If you've seen the Big Eye table saw fence, you know how excited you're going to be able to get one of those on the bandsaw because they're really, really nice fences. Adjusting the table from 90 all the way down to 45 is extremely easy, and it's because there's this piston here that helps offset or counteract this weight so that it's not just super hard to do. You can do this really with one hand, and it just operates very smooth. Now this fence does glide very smooth, and it's almost like a T-glide fence. It is a T-glide fence. So it's similar to what would be on a table saw. It just glides really smooth and it locks down where you want it and it doesn't move. I really like that. This is a high and low fence like most bandsaws have, so you can slide this out, put it in on the low setting should you need that. Now before we use this to see how it's going to perform, I think one of the best things that you can do in a small shop is get it on a mobile base. And this is the M1500 Harvey mobile base. This thing is really, really nice. You can lock it down just by stepping on that red pedal. It locks down, puts those feet down so it's not going to move on you. You can do your cutting. And then when you're ready, it unlocks very easy. Just stick your foot under it, flip your toe up, and you're good to go. And it rolls very, very smooth. It's just a really good, very well made mobile base. It's not sagging, anything like that. It's holding the weight of this bandsaw very well. Now this has several safety features on it that I really appreciate being on there. First, you can unlock and lock this out. So if you have small kids or anybody in the shop that you don't want to mess with your tools and get injured or anything like that, it does have a key lock. You can just turn it to lock, remove the key, and the power switch will not work from that point. It also has emergency shut-off should you need to use that. That's also the stop button from what I could tell. And then also it does have a blade brake, and I absolutely love having a blade brake because if you don't have a blade brake on a bandsaw, it spins and spins and spins for up to a minute, sometimes more than a minute, and it's just very, very dangerous because you get complacent not thinking about it because the blade's spinning a minute later, you can cut yourself. So I'm glad to see this blade break there. This saw also has 2 dust extraction ports, one right under the tabletop and then one on the bottom on the back side. If you have a way to pipe that dual dust extraction on there, you can get even better dust collection. On the dual dust ports though, if you're not going to use both, you can cap one off, and they do include that cap. So if you just wanted to use one or the other, you can. Remember when I said their motto is good is not good enough? There's a few things on here that I think really resonate or really amplify that message. First and foremost, there's a little tool storage holder on the left. Now that might not seem very important, but if you have certain tools that you need to adjust the fence and things like that, they need to be readily available so you don't lose them. If you know how that goes, you put it somewhere and you forget where it's at. Now, there's a slot for every tool that you're going to need to adjust this bandsaw right here mounted to the side. You keep up with your stuff. I like that. Next is included with this bandsaw is their Compass RG2. Now this is like a roller feather board. So there's rollers on there that adjust in and out with this dial. You can really dial in how much pressure you want putting toward the fence. This is a very useful accessory that they've included with this bandsaw, and I'm glad they did. Now this is the 2. There is also a 1 that you can get that's thinner if you're doing more thinner stock, but this is perfect if you're going to be doing resawing, things like that. And it also has a feed direction on there that won't let it kick back. So if you want to use this on your table saw, you certainly can, because it's using the same 3/4 inch miter slot as most table saws. So you can use this on multiple tools and help prevent kickback and get more accurate cuts. And going along with good is not good enough, as I touched on this fence, very nice fence. It's much better than some of the other ones I've used, and the way you adjust the rollers also better than most I've used. And overall, the fit and finish of this machine is just top quality, which you would expect at this price point. Now this saw is a 230 volt tool. It has a 3 horsepower motor on it, and I wanted to see how well it was going to perform. So the first thing I wanted to try was some resawing. This is just a piece of walnut. I wanted to resaw it right in half, and I was able to do that extremely easily, and it's really good. Like, it was very, very accurate. Like, it didn't walk, the blade wasn't moving and waving and all that stuff. It did a very good job there. And then I wanted to use the RG2 to see how well that was going to work, and I was very impressed with how that works. It just helps keep that pressure against the fence while you're pushing through. I just use a standard push stick to do that with the second cut. Overall, very nice and plenty of power to do anything you're going to want to do with a bandsaw. Now, not only is this top almost 3 times harder than cast iron, it also doesn't get sticky like cast iron. So a lot of times on my cast iron tops, I'll spray something or put something down like Carbon Coat or even Bow Shield T9 or even paste wax to make it a little slickier, because you want your wood to glide on there and not stick as you're trying to push it through the cut. You don't really have to worry about that here because this nickel coating is just different than cast iron. Now Harvey did a very similar test where they laid a wet rag overnight on cast iron and on this nickel plating, and as you can see, it rusted the cast iron. I'm not willing to sacrifice any of my tabletops for that test. I just wanted to see if the nickel plating will rust, because I know cast iron will. So I think it's safe to say that this nickel plating is going to hold up a lot better than cast iron will in your shop, in your environment, no matter how humid or damp or how many drinks you sit on it. All right, we're about 20 hours later on this tabletop. We're going to see if there's any rust or anything like that that's going to show up. First, under the Topo Chico, it is now not cold anymore. Still delicious. Nothing there. There's a water spot, but as you can see, those come right up. For now, under the rag, it is still quite wet, actually. On the surface, there's literally nothing there. We'll dry it with a paper towel. Other than a little water spot, flawless. So I think it's very safe to say, after leaving it in the rain for an hour or so and then letting it drip dry overnight, letting a wet rag just lay on top of this surface overnight, as well as that bottle there, and still having a flawless finish, you're not going to have to worry about rust. So I confirm with what Harvey says, is this is a stainless top. If you're in the market for a new bandsaw, table saw, or even a router table, you owe it to yourself to check out Harvey and see if it's right for you in your shop. I think you'll be surprised at a lot of the innovation and the technology that they're using to make some really great woodworking tools. If you like this video, you got to check out that video right there. Click that box, get you the big old virtual fist bump.